Hey there, Square Army. How's it going? For today, I'm discussing Unexplained Absence.
You can join the Screw Army by subscribing.
Alright, so 4 mana instant, for each player, we exile up to one target non-land permanent that player controls. For each permanent exiled this way, its controller effectively manifests the top card of their library as a 2/2 creature with Ward 2. So in thinking about how good this is, I want to directly compare it to like a card we've already got, which is Council's Judgment, which does a similar sort of effect to this. Yes, this is one more mana, but your opponents can't choose like with Council's Judgment. You get all the choices on what you're exiling. You get to exile 3 things from your opponents. You can exile something of your own, I guess, if you want to. I don't think you want to, unless you're in some sort of cloaking deck or that you do have ways to kind of flip your things over, but I don't think that you'd necessarily really want to do that. But whatever, that is there. Maybe someone's found a weird synergy or combo or whatever with doing that, I don't know, but at least for the most part you probably just want to be exiling your opponent's stuff, which isn't too bad, I guess. So again, you get all the choices. You get to exile 3 things. With a lot of cards that are 3 or more mana value, like Council's Judgment and Unexplained Absence here, I feel like they've got to put in way more work than a lot of other cards. I don't love the politics with Council's Judgment because sometimes it doesn't line up, and that's why I like this, is because like I said, you get all the choices, you get to choose what you're doing. Yes, you can't sort of go ahead and target one person down, or you can't use the politics to sort of get one person if they're way ahead down, but usually you're worried about all of your opponents anyway for the most part. Especially me, that's where I almost always find myself. Like, even if I'm almost the threat, it's like, well, I've got to keep this lead, and if I can't take all of my opponents down at the same, or roughly at the same time, then it's just getting really, really difficult to really sort of keep and manage everything, because, you know, everyone's a threat to you at the same time. It's not like, well, unless somebody's just sitting there and just like mana screwed or like absolutely mana flooded or whatever, then of course they might not be a threat to you, but that's a rare circumstances. For the most part, in most games, most people are going to be a threat to you, so you need to be sticking on top of that mountain if you are the threat. So it works if you are the threat or if you're trying to deal with threats. And it helps you become the threat to a degree as well, suddenly, you know, because suddenly you've cast this and gotten rid of 3 things from your opponents and that sort of thing. So it really, yes, as I sort of said, you can't deal with one person if they're the threat and you're just like sitting there behind like you can with Council's Judgment. As I said, you can sort of do that politicking thing and whatnot. With Council's Judgment, if somebody is the clear threat or whatever, or clearly way ahead or whatever, and say, hey, let's get rid of 3 things from this person, you know, or whatever, they're going to vote for something else, whatever, that doesn't matter, you know, like they'll get rid of something, that's cool, whatever, but at least we can get rid of 3 of their things, or 2 of their things, or whatever else, or yeah, 3 of their things, and then they'll get rid of 1 thing or whatever. But yeah, at least they'll have lost a lot of their stuff, so we'll be able to get, you know, again, into that position. With this, like, I'm thinking of the Golgari card, like Windgrace's Judgment, which does a sort of almost similar thing to this. Yes, it can target, like, 4 or 5 different permanents for each player or whatever, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, no, I just looked it up just to see. No, it's not even that good, actually. Like, that's one thing about Windgrace's Judgment. Like, this is Windgrace's Judgment, but in white and just better. Like, yes, like, exile is way better. And yes, if they have like some way to flip over their creatures, or whatever else they get on off the top, then that might not be that amazing. But again, like, this is a sort of a 2-for-1. You exiling something from their field and from their library, which is why like Reality Shift is so good, because like 9 times out of 10 they're not going to be able to flip that card over. Even if they've got it, yes, maybe it'll end up in their graveyard if it blocks or attacks or whatever else. But no, like, I don't think anyone really cares that much that you've also destroyed another one of their cards or sent another one of their cards to the graveyard, except maybe in like Muldrotha or something, or Merrin or something like that. Yeah, sure, but again, you've exiled one of their cards and you've given them a hoop or whatever to get around, or maybe not, but still, like, in some ways you've given them something, perhaps, but you've also gotten rid of something. And again, that's not every deck that you're going to have that with. Most decks are just going to be like, well, shit, now this thing dies and it goes to the graveyard or whatever, and then they're maybe going to get it back, maybe, who knows. But they're not going to have many chances to sort of flip it and get what's on the other side for the most part. Yes, again, there's going to be exceptions to that. So not never, ever, but again, most of the time they're just not going to be able to do anything about it. Yes, sure, it has Ward 2, so you've got to sort of pay up to target those things, but I don't think you'll care that much, because like a 4-mana thing that you can, exile, premium-based removal there, one thing from each of your opponents is pretty darn good. So, I don't know. I think Windgrace's Judgment is such a big staple card that I feel like this being probably better than it feels like it should get to see as much, if not more, play than what that did. Yeah, and Windgrace's Judgment is sort of a little bit restrictive because it is like 2 colors, whereas this is 1 color, and that sort of thing. So it can kind of go into more decks. The problem, perhaps, is here, which is that when you get to 4 mana and more, like, as I sort of said, like, 3+ mana has got to do way more, especially when you're talking about single target. This isn't single target, I know, we're getting there. Usually when you're talking 4 mana, you're talking about Wraths. And that's why I didn't really love Windgrace's Judgment and cards of that ilk. I don't really think there's many cards of this sort anyway, but, like, there might be some more that I'm not really thinking of right now, but, like, this is a pretty unique effect in that regard. So, but anyway, still, I'm sort of a little bit on the fence about that, because if this was 3 mana, dear God, yes, absolutely. Like 3 mana and I get to exile like one of each of my opponent's things, it's obviously super good. But again, like, you compare it to Council's Judgment, which is double white and 1. Whereas this is just 3 and a white. It's a lot easier to cast and a lot easier to splash in a lot of other decks where, you might be 3 or 4 or even 5 colors or whatever. Obviously, if you're in 1 color or 2 colors, it's not going to be that as big of a problem. But still, like, that is a slight benefit for it being, easier to cast and easier to use in some decks and whatnot. So I think I do want to tinker with this in my decks. I'm not 100% what I will take out, because, like, a lot of my, like, this is the same thing I think with everyone now. Like, but maybe I'll take out something from some of my 2-color decks, because, like, they already have decent removal, not the best sometimes, but just saying, oh, well, I'll trade in my Contraband Livestock, which is one of the worst removals that I've actually got in some of my decks. for something like this, which is 2 mana more, but for that 2 more mana, I can exile, any permanent instead of just a creature, and I can exile any permanent from 3 of my opponents, or even more if I'm playing even more in a 5-player game or a 6-player game, which doesn't happen very much. But again, if you start playing some of these more multiplayer games, you can just start hitting a lot of things. That's why I think Windgrace's Judgment can be good. It certainly can be good, as I sort of have said in the past, but I've just not had been a big fan of it. But this I feel like I'm a bit of a fan of. But then again, I enjoy white, but that's just me. I know some people don't like white, but certainly I would feel like I want to try this, because it does seem again, Windgrace's Judgment wasn't bad, but I just felt like maybe that it didn't quite hit right, and it didn't quite make the mark. I don't know. So I don't know whether I'll get the same feeling from this, but, there's another spell that I'm thinking of. Return to Dust and Crush Contraband. Both of those, you get to choose effectively 2 things to exile for 4 mana. Again, you have that flexibility, to an extent, again, where you're kind of you're not giving them anything, but what you're giving them actually is a negative for the most part, because you're removing another card from their library, which means that they can't realistically play those cards or whatever, or they don't really have access to those cards. So it can really hurt some people. Yeah, sometimes I'll be annoyed by that as well, but still, it's one of those things where it's real good, because again, just the same amount of mana as those spells, and even Return to Dust is effectively a sorcery, because you've got to play it on your turn or whatever for you to get the 2 permanents or 2 artifacts or enchantments or whatever, rather than play it at instant speed what's name? Crush Contraband. So yeah, I definitely will try this. I don't know that it can fit in every deck that I've got that's white, but that's the challenge sometimes, I think, because this is the thing that we keep saying again and again. No matter how many good cards they print, you've always got to be able to cut the space in your deck for new cards and for better cards. So you've always got to be on the lookout for cards like this, because this is such a house card. So it's just one of those things where you've got to go, well, how can I make room for this? What can I cut for this? I still feel like white should have a 1 mana disenchant effect. So that would be something that I would like to see. But then, is it going to be better than green's 1 mana white? 1 mana disenchant? I don't know, because that disenchant is goddamn good. But when you're not playing green, you often are playing white, because white's the only other color that has really good artifact and enchantment removal, unless you're just I want to be sad and not be able to blow up somebody's artifact or enchantment. Though blue has gotten some artifact and enchantment, artifact removal mainly, and black got I think a couple of cards recently that sort of deal with enchantments, sort of. But yeah, I'm definitely thinking about putting this in most of my decks now. I don't, as I sort of said, don't know exactly what I'm going to have to cut to make room for it, but that's, as I say, the challenge, and that's the challenge that we've all got to face whenever we see cards like this. Oh man, this will do some work. I was just thinking that actually, just it popped right into my head just then. This is better Decimate. I've been complaining for so long about how bad Decimate is. Yeah, and when Windgrace's Judgment came out, I was like, well, that's it for Decimate. But now I feel like this is almost it for, it definitely was all it for Decimate, because Decimate's never been like amazingly good. Like, yeah, if you hit it, you feel amazing, but like this will never miss. Like, and that's the same thing with Windgrace's Judgment. It'll effectively never miss because you never have to worry about if one player doesn't have an enchantment or something on the field or whatever it is, or an artifact on the field. You have to just go, okay, you have permanents, those permanents go bye-bye. You know, like, that's the thing. Like, and yes, like, one player might not have anything. Like, again, like, that can happen. But, like, if you're just hitting two of your opponents, like, even so, that's still pretty good. And even if, like, two of your opponents don't have anything, like, I think it's probably pretty bad at that point. But at that point, like, that's a very small margin of time that you're gonna have it really with. Like, it's not gonna whiff very much. And 4 mana to exile, effectively kind of two things, one from their field and one off the top of their library. That might not be that great, but 9 times out of 10, or almost 10 times, or 9.5 times out of 10, is probably going to be way better than that. So I think it's got a much better hit rate than Decimate or Windgrace's Judgment again. So, yeah, like, if you're on the fence about it, yeah, that's where I think, like, you've got to look at it. You've kind of got to look at it going, well, what does this do? How much better is it than any other cards that are kind of similar or whatever? Because, again, you've got to compare it to Wraths or things that kind of target multiple things. And this is probably one, like, again, the power creep is real. But, again, that's the way that sometimes we need it. We need cards that are actually, like, good and decent and playable. And probably White needed an effect like this to an extent because, like, White's all about this sort of thing. So, like, it does make sense for White to kind of have this, which is nice for White to have, you know? So, yeah, I'm 100% on this, and I'm still, like, going, well, I know maybe in a couple of decks what I'll take out for it, maybe if I haven't already taken them out, but I don't know. So, I'm still sitting here going, maybe. And, like, what am I taking out? So, yeah, that's where I'm at with this one. But you guys can let me know what you guys think. Write your thoughts down there in the comments below. What do you think you'll take out for this? Or will you take something out for this? Or will you just take out a land or something? Or be really greedy? I don't know. Like, I've seen some people be really, really greedy with their lands. And I'm like, well, they're going to get punished. Even I get punished, you know, like, and that with the decks that I have. And yeah, it's not a lot of fun when you get punished. But, like, when you're running, like, only 20 something lands or whatever, like, you're probably going to get punished, and you probably deserve to be punished at that point, like, or whatever. Unless you're like, yeah, CDH or something, and you've got a lot of the low drop mana rocks or whatever. But still, yeah. But anyway, guys, hope you've enjoyed this one and hope you'll join me again in another one.